The Sacramento Kings extended their playoff drought to 16 seasons in a year where they traded away a rising star in only the second year of his deal for an All-Star in a win-now move. So with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis leading the way and having committed to pushing for the postseason, what's next for the Sacramento Kings? As mentioned, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis are the lead duo for this team over the next few seasons, which is a fairly good duo. De'Aaron Fox had a poor and slow start to the 2021-22 season, but that has led him to be severely underrated, as he is simply better than what he showed throughout the first few months of the season, and it showed after the trade of Tyrese Haliburton when he reclaimed the backcourt to himself and had a very good stretch after the trade deadline. Throughout February and March, Fox played arguably the best basketball of his career, shooting the best he ever has from three and scoring at a higher production and efficiency than ever before. But that doesn't really seem to get talked about. The narrative with De'Aaron Fox last year is that he had a bad season. Now that stretch was only a 16-game sample size, but that isn't a completely insignificant length of time. This isn't a 5-game stretch where someone is hot. You can't fluke 16 games for the most part. You can play better than you typically will, but it isn't a complete fluke. De'Aaron Fox is a solid player. And the majority of those games were alongside newly acquired star Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis is a star in his own right, a two-time All-Star with some playoff experience under his belt, and this Kings team will be hoping that he can bring some of that All-Star quality and playoff experience to this team. Alongside their star duo will be Davion Mitchell, who was impressive in his own right towards the end of the 2021-22 season. He is a very good defender and showed some of that offensive promise towards the end of the year that he showed in college at Baylor, where he had significant success winning the NCAA tournament, and the Kings will be hoping that winning mentality and success can influence and pay benefits on this year's roster. Harrison Barnes remains a valuable part of the roster. He has been in and out of trade rumors over the last 12 to 18 months, but with the Kings' commitment to now a winning mindset, expect Harrison Barnes to play an important role for the Kings this season and be much less involved in trade rumors. Richaun Holmes had another fine season in Sacramento, the first year of his new contract, but he did get less minutes and less of an opportunity on offense, something that could be even more so amplified with the addition of fellow big man Domantas Sabonis. Still a valuable player, but his role on this team may become less significant. Justin Holiday was added in the Domantas Sabonis trade and will be a valuable 3-and-D wing off of the bench alongside the other wing depth of Mo Harkless and Chimezie Metu. And assuming he resigns, which will be discussed later, Donte DiVincenzo will be a valuable part of this rotation, give some three-point shooting and spacing, and filling that bench shooting guard role of Buddy Hield, where he has been for several years now, whereas Terrence Davis is also likely to have some minutes in that shooting guard spot. The hope just is that Donte DiVincenzo can get back to playing some very good basketball as he was pre-injury in Milwaukee and not what we saw from him last year. Expect Terrence Davis to have a role as well. He played some very, very good basketball through December and January before picking up a significant injury. As far as big men go, Trey Lyles played arguably the best basketball of his career after being traded to Sacramento, and Damian Jones showed he can be a valuable NBA center over the last couple of months of the season, neither of which are guaranteed to be with the team next season, which we will talk about in a moment. I expect a fairly easygoing offseason from the Sacramento Kings, specifically with regards to free agency. The Kings have a few free agents to potentially bring back, and after that, we'll have very minimal cap space to add some depth. The biggest part of Kings free agency is going to be restricted free agent Donte DiVincenzo. He was acquired at the trade deadline and has not found his form since returning from injury, but has been a valuable depth piece on some Bucks playoff runs and could be a valuable depth piece for the Kings next season and beyond, assuming he can get back to his pre-injury quality. Damian Jones is the other free agent of significance for the Kings, who at 26 in year 6 played the best basketball of his NBA career over the last month and a half of the season. He's not some amazing center, but he can be a good backup for them if they want him to fill that role for them next season, and he's happy to come back. Josh Jackson and Jeremy Lamb are also unrestricted free agents, but I don't consider them to be an important part of the Kings' future, and I do not expect them to get re-signed. Trey Lyles is not a free agent in the summer, but his contract is on a team option. He played some of the best basketball of his career in Sacramento, and it remains to be seen whether he will return for another season. As it typically has been for Sacramento over the last decade or more, the Kings' core part of their offseason is the draft, where they will hopefully be able to add some pieces to push for the playoffs next year and long term. the Kings will have the 7th best odds in the lottery alongside pick 37 and 49. Ultimately, I would expect the Kings to have a fairly quiet summer outside of their first round pick, where the Kings will hope to continue to improve. As previously mentioned, the Sacramento Kings have made a win-now move to acquire Sabonis at the trade deadline, and so the question is, are the Kings a playoff team next season? The Kings duo of Fox and Sabonis is the biggest strength and in turn the biggest argument for this Kings team to make the 2023 playoffs. And this certainly is a very good duo, but it's not a duo consisting of a high-level all-star. The Sacramento team has some fine pieces around their duo in Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, Davion Mitchell, Dante DiVincenzo, amongst others, but ultimately the biggest factor against the Kings not making the playoffs next year is their competition and the immense amount of talent that is currently in the league. These following teams, in my opinion, are undoubtedly better than the Kings heading into next season, assuming no drastic changes, which specifically for the Jazz is not a given. But those teams would be the Jazz, the Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Mavericks, Clippers, Timberwolves, Nuggets, and Pelicans. That leaves one play-in tournament spot. Only one. And this is not including teams like Portland, which, if they don't trade Damian Lillard, which seems unlikely, could improve. Includes San Antonio, who just made it into the play-in tournament on a very young team that will likely only get better. Or the Lakers, who, as much as I'm not optimistic about their situation, will still have a team that has LeBron and AD and could push again and have a much better season, at least, than they did this year. Ultimately, I think the Kings will be better next year. I think they will be more competitive, and I think their star-led duo of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis is quite good. But unfortunately, due to the immense amount of talent in the West, the playoff drought likely continues for another season.